I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. The hum of the evening settled around me as I lounged in our living room, the golden light of sunset streaming through the window. It was our quiet time, that magical hour when the day's demands ebbed away. My wife, Julia, was in her craft room, her sanctuary, where she breathed life into her scrapbooks. She had a knack for freezing time within those pages, capturing our smiles and adventures, preserving them in vibrant collages. "Mark, come see this." Julia's voice, tinged with excitement, called out from her craft room. I pushed myself off the couch and ambled towards her. The scent of glue and old paper greeted me as I entered the room filled with scattered photos and colorful scraps. Julia, her eyes sparkling, held up her latest creation. "Look, I've started a new book from our Italy trip last summer," she said, flipping through the pages filled with pictures of vineyards and ancient ruins. "It's beautiful, honey," I replied, my gaze lingering on a particular photo. It was her, radiant as ever, but the intimacy of the embrace she shared with a man I didn't recognize unsettled me. "Who's this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden tightness in my chest. "Oh, that's just a friend from the tour group," she brushed off casually, turning the page. But the seed of doubt was planted. That night, after Julia went to sleep, I found myself drawn back to the scrapbook. Flipping through the pages under the dim light, the truth began to unfold. There, amid snapshots of laughter and landscapes, were more photos of her and the same man, his arm around her waist, a secret smile shared over coffee. Each image, a piercing shard into my heart. The confrontation was inevitable. "Why, Julia? Who is he?" The photos lay scattered between us like fallen leaves. "It was nothing, Mark. Just a fling." "It didn't mean anything," she pleaded, her voice breaking. The revelation shattered the image of our perfect life. The betrayal was a festering wound, and anger seethed within me. I had loved her deeply, wholly, and this was her deceit. Sleepless nights followed, my mind racing with visions of their hidden moments. Revenge whispered in my ears, a dark call that grew louder with each echoing heartbeat. I devised a plan, cold and calculated. If she had chosen to break our vows, I would ensure everyone knew the facade she wore. "I want a divorce," I declared one morning, the words cutting through the silence of our kitchen. Julia's face went pale, her lips trembling. "Mark, please, we can." "There's no we anymore," I interrupted coldly. The divorce was swift, the details splashed across social media, her indiscretions laid bare for all to see. Her reputation crumbled, friends turned away, and she moved out, her presence erased from my life like the pictures we once cherished. As the door closed behind her for the last time, a chilling satisfaction settled over me. But beneath it, a whisper of doubt lingered. Had my revenge truly mended the broken pieces of my heart? The scrapbook remained on the shelf, a relic of a past life, its pages a mix of joy and pain. I was free, yet the shadow of our memories lingered, a haunting reminder of what had been and what could never be again. The world seemed different now, drained of the color and warmth it once held. The quiet of the house was no longer comforting, it was a cavernous space echoing with the ghosts of our past laughter. After Julia's departure, life became a series of monotonous days, each blending into the next, punctuated only by the murmur of the city outside. One chilly evening, as I returned home from work, a surprise awaited me. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, its contents simple yet jarring: "Meet me at Café Lyon at 8 p.m. "It's about Julia." Curiosity, mingled with a lingering storm of emotions, propelled me to the café. The familiar bell jingled as I pushed the door open, scanning the dimly lit room. At a secluded corner sat a man, his features obscured by the shadows. My heart raced as I approached, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. "You wanted to talk about Julia?" I asked, my voice tense as I sat across from him. The man leaned forward, his face coming into the light. It was Tom, one of my closest friends, his expression grave. "Mark, I think you need to see this." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photos, pictures of Julia, looking distressed, her new life evidently not the fresh start she had hoped for. "What's this? Why are you showing me these?" My voice was a mix of confusion and anger. "Because there's more to the story than you know," Tom replied solemnly. "Julia didn't just leave because of the scandal. She's in trouble, Mark. She's gotten mixed up with some dangerous people." The revelation hit me like a cold wave. My quest for revenge, it seemed, had unintended consequences. "Why are you involved in this, Tom?" I questioned, suspicion knitting my brow. "I've been helping her, Mark. She reached out to me after everything fell apart. She was scared, had nowhere else to turn." The cafe's clattering dishes and murmuring patrons faded into the background as Tom recounted tales of Julia's downward spiral, debts incurred, threats received. My anger towards her began to waver, replaced by an unsettling concern. "What do you expect me to do with this information?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, Mark. But I thought you should know the truth." Maybe there's a part of you that still cares," Tom suggested, his eyes searching mine for a sign of the man he once knew. I left the cafe with the photos heavy in my pocket, the night air sharp against my skin. The drive home was a blur, my mind wrestling with conflicting emotions. The sight of our empty home brought a palpable sense of loneliness that settled around me like a shroud. Lying awake that night, the images of Julia's haunted face haunted me. Guilt, a new and bitter companion, gnawed at me. Had my actions pushed her into danger? The thought was a poison, spreading through the remnants of my broken heart. The dawn brought no relief, only the stark realization that I could not ignore her plight. Whether it was love or mere humanity, I knew I had to find her, to help her if I could. The past might not be redeemable, but perhaps I could mend some of the damage I had wrought. As the city awoke, I made a decision. I would track Julia down, confront the tangled mess my revenge had created. It was a path fraught with uncertainty, but I had to take it. Not just for her, but for the part of me that needed to right a wrong, no matter the cost. The morning light had barely touched the skyline when I started my search. The first stop was Tom's place, a small apartment cluttered with the relics of a less complicated time. He opened the door, his face lined with worry. "Mark, you're early. Have you made a decision?" Tom asked as he ushered me inside. "I'm going to find her, Tom. I need to know she's safe," I declared, my resolve firm despite the gnawing uncertainty. Tom nodded, pulling out his phone. "I've got a lead. There's a guy, calls himself Eddie. He's connected to the people Julia owes money to. He hangs out at a bar in the East End, the Rusty Anchor." The name sent a shiver down my spine. The Rusty Anchor was notorious, a breeding ground for the city's shady dealings. But desperation overshadowed caution. "Let's go," I said, my voice edged with determination. We arrived at the Rusty Anchor by late afternoon, the bar's grimy windows doing little to invite the faint winter sunlight. The place reeked of stale beer and broken dreams. We found Eddie at the back, a mountain of a man with a scar tracing down his left cheek. "You the one asking about Julia?" Eddie's voice was a low rumble, suspicious and cold. "Yes. I need to find her. She's in trouble," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. Eddie studied me, his gaze calculating. "Trouble? Julia's deeper in the hole than you can imagine." "What's she to you?" "She's my wife." "Well, ex-wife," I corrected, feeling a twinge of pain at the admission. Eddie chuckled darkly. "Ex or not, you want to help her, you're gonna have to help me first." "What do you want?" I asked, bracing myself. "There's a package. Needs to be picked up from a warehouse on the docks. No questions asked, you bring it to me, and I'll tell you where to find Julia," Eddie proposed, his tone non-negotiable. The proposition reeked of danger, but my options were limited. "All right, I'll do it." Tom shot me a worried look, but I shrugged it off. We left the bar with directions to the warehouse. The drive was tense, each mile stretching out before us filled with the unknown. The warehouse was isolated, surrounded by the skeletal remains of old shipping containers. The package was a small, unassuming box waiting on a lone pallet. I grabbed it, my heart pounding as I hurried back to the car. "We should open it, see what we're dealing with," Tom suggested as we drove away. "No, we stick to the plan," I insisted, the weight of the box ominous in my lap. We returned to the rusty anchor with the package. Eddie took it, nodding in satisfaction. "All right. Julia's laying low at a motel upstate. Room 12, he disclosed, scribbling the address on a piece of napkin. "Thanks," I muttered, though gratitude was the last thing I felt. Tom and I left immediately for the motel, the urgency propelling us forward. The drive was a blur, my thoughts consumed with images of Julia, her smile, her betrayal, and now her peril. The motel was a rundown place, the neon sign flickering erratically. Room 12 was at the end, the door slightly ajar. I knocked softly, my heart in my throat. The door swung open, and there she was. Julia, thinner, her eyes wide with shock and then flooding with relief when she saw me. "Mark? What are you doing here?" Her voice was a whisper, a mix of fear and confusion. "I'm here to help, Julia." "Let's get you out of here," I said, stepping into the room. The reunion was fraught with tension, old wounds mingling with the pressing need to escape the mess we were both caught in. As we left the motel, the sun setting behind us, I knew this was just the beginning. Helping Julia was not just about retribution anymore, it was about redemption, for both of us. The night was silent as we drove away from the seedy motel, the darkness enveloping us like a shroud. Julia sat next to me, her body tense, her eyes fixed on the passing shadows. "Why did you come for me, Mark?" Julia's voice broke the silence, a hint of genuine perplexity in her tone. "Because nobody deserves to be left in the dark, no matter what they've done," I replied, my words measured, masking the turmoil within. She nodded, looking out the window, her silhouette ghostly in the moonlight. We drove in silence, heading towards what I had told her was a safe house. But the coordinates I had entered into the GPS led somewhere else entirely, the warehouse where I had picked up Eddie's mysterious package. "Why are we stopping here?" Julia's voice trembled as I parked the car outside the abandoned warehouse. "There's something you need to see," I said, my voice steady as I led her inside. The warehouse was dark, save for a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What is this, Mark?" Julia asked, her voice rising in panic as she looked around. "This is where the truth comes out," I said, pulling a small device from my pocket, a recorder that had been activated the night I spoke with Eddie. The playback filled the space between us, Eddie's gruff voice echoing off the concrete walls, revealing the full extent of Julia's betrayal, not just an affair but her involvement in illicit activities that went far beyond a mere fling. She had lied about the extent of her entanglement, and even now, she was trying to manipulate the narrative. Julia's face paled as she listened, her eyes widening in fear. "Mark, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped, cutting her off. "I know everything, Julia. You used your distress to pull me back in, to use me once more." She stepped back, her back against the cold wall. "What are you going to do to me?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I said coldly. I walked over to a panel on the wall and pulled it open, revealing a myriad of electronic equipment, surveillance feeds from across the city, including one showing the police arriving at the rusty anchor. I had tipped them off about Eddie's dealings, ensuring that all loose ends were tied. "You set me up." Julia gasped, realization dawning on her. "Not just you," I replied, turning the screen to show another feed, this one of Tom being taken into custody. Anyone who betrays me. Julia slumped, defeated, as I dialed the police on my phone. I have someone here who will be very interested in making a statement, I said into the receiver. As we waited for the police to arrive, Julia stared at me, a mix of fear and resignation in her eyes. You've become just like them, Mark. Ruthless. Maybe, I conceded, watching as the red and blue lights flashed through the warehouse windows. But I'm the one walking away tonight. When the police took Julia away, there was no dramatic goodbye, no final clash of words, just the silence of a chapter firmly closed. I watched as the car disappeared into the night, the weight of what I had done, and what I had become, settling heavily on my shoulders. Alone, I turned off the lights and left the warehouse, the echoes of deceit and retribution fading into the dark. As I walked into the new dawn, the bitter taste of victory was my only companion. The game was over, and in the end, betrayal had left us all broken, scattered pieces in a grim tableau of revenge.